When I shared the news at dinner, my dad grunted and changed the subject to Amy's upcoming dance recital. My mom at least said, "That's nice," but quickly moved on. The night of Amy's recital, which fell on the same day I was leaving for Harvard, my parents couldn't drive me to the airport because they didn't want to miss Amy's performance. I had to ask a friend's parents for a ride. The college application process was another painful experience. I spent months perfecting my essays, participating in extracurriculars, and studying for the SATs. I was accepted into several top-tier universities and received a substantial scholarship to my dream school. When I announced this at dinner, my parents' response was lukewarm at best. My dad said, "That's good, but don't let it go to your head. College isn't everything." My mom added, "Just don't forget about us when you're off becoming a big shot." In contrast, when Amy barely graduated high school and decided not to go to college, my parents were completely supportive. They praised her for knowing herself and not conforming to societal pressures. They even bought her a car as a graduation present, something they never did for me. This constant favoritism took a heavy toll on me emotionally. I struggled with depression and anxiety throughout my teens and early 20s. I started seeing a therapist in college, which helped me understand that my parents' behavior wasn't my fault. It took years of work to build my self-esteem and learn to validate myself instead of seeking approval from my parents. Despite the lack of support from my immediate family, I managed to build a good life for myself. I graduated college with honors, secured a good job in finance, and even bought my own house by 27. I'm proud of what I've achieved, even if my parents aren't. Now here's where the current drama starts. My grandfather on my dad's side passed away recently. He was a successful businessman who built a fortune from scratch, and he left behind a significant estate. In his will, he divided his assets equally among his children, my dad and his siblings, and grandchildren, me, Amy, and our cousins. My share of the inheritance was substantial, about $500,000. It would have allowed me to pay off my student loans, invest in my future, and maybe even start my own business someday. I was grateful for this unexpected windfall and the opportunities it could provide. However, when the will was read, my parents were visibly upset. They pulled me aside afterward and told me they thought it was unfair that I got an equal share. They said Amy needed the money more because she was struggling. She works part-time at a coffee shop and lives in our parents' basement. I was shocked but tried to stay calm. I explained that this was Grandpa's decision and it wasn't up to them to change it. They insisted that I should do the right thing and give my share to Amy. When I refused, they got angry and started guilt-tripping me, saying I was selfish and ungrateful. My dad brought up every instance he could think of where they had supported me, including paying for my braces, which were medically necessary, buying me school supplies, the bare minimum, and letting me live at home during college, even though I worked part-time to contribute to expenses. He conveniently forgot about the car they bought Amy, the countless shopping sprees, and the fact that they're still supporting her at 25. The situation escalated quickly. My dad, as the executor of the will, decided to take matters into his own hands. He announced that he was going to reinterpret Grandpa's wishes and give my entire share to Amy on top of her own inheritance. He claimed this is what Grandpa would have wanted if he had known our individual circumstances. I was devastated. Not only was this clearly illegal, but it was also a painful reminder of how little my parents valued me. I tried to reason with them, pointing out that Grandpa had always treated all his grandchildren equally and that he was well aware of our situations. My mom then accused me of speaking ill of the dead by suggesting Grandpa would have wanted anything different from what my dad was proposing. I brought up specific memories of Grandpa encouraging my academic and career pursuits, but my parents dismissed these as misunderstandings. They claimed Grandpa had privately expressed concern about Amy's future and had wanted to ensure she was taken care of. When I asked why he hadn't just written the will that way, they didn't have an answer. Amy, for her part, seemed uncomfortable with the situation but didn't speak up against our parents. When I tried to talk to her privately, she just shrugged and said, "Mom and Dad know best." It was clear she wasn't going to be any help. Feeling hurt and betrayed, I reached out to my paternal grandmother, Grandpa's widow, for advice. She was furious when she heard what was happening. She told me that this was absolutely not what Grandpa had intended and that my parents had no right to change the will. Grandma shared some information that shed new light on the situation. Apparently, my parents had approached Grandpa a few years ago asking him to leave everything to Amy in his will. Grandpa had firmly refused, stating that he believed in treating all his grandchildren equally. He had even added a clause to his will stating that anyone who contested the equal distribution would forfeit their share. Armed with this information, I confronted my parents. They were shocked that Grandma had told me about their previous attempt to influence the will. My dad tried to justify it by saying they were just looking out for Amy's future, but I could see the guilt on their faces. Grandma took action immediately. She contacted her lawyer and the other executors of the will. She also reached out to my dad's siblings, who were equally outraged by what my dad was trying to do. Together, they put a stop to my dad's plan and ensured that the will would be executed as written. My parents were forced to back down, but they were furious with me. They accused me of turning the family against them and said I should have handled this in-house instead of involving others. Now you can check for a part 2 by pressing share and more.